excited to do this interview. We're here with Ryan Love. He's a songwriter, musician, singer, actor extravaganza here. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm very well. Hi, Simon. Hi, Jack. Thank you for having me, guys. I really
Of
appreciate it.
course.
Great.
Thanks for being on. And I just want to reiterate from what Julia said at the beginning of the episode. Do stick around for the track. We play a new track every week. This week's is Genuine Suspension by Emily Weibel, and she's a really amazing composer and singer. So stick around for that. Ryan, can you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. Well, once again, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. And I feel honored to be on this forum because I know this is the Brooklyn Composers Collective, and I happen to be a Brooklyn native and resident. So I am one of the few natives still left in New York City. But yeah, I was born and raised here. I've been a performer for the majority of my life. I've started singing in church, my background in musical theater, and I, even more recently have done a lot of event entertainment. So upscale, I work for a company that does upscale events, weddings, corporate events, that sort of thing. And I am also a recording artist.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
That's great. So how has it been not, focusing on the recording artist aspect of yourself rather than the, I guess, corporate commercial part?
It's been a pleasant change up, I have to say, because typically that would sort of be taking up most of my time,
Uh-huh.
just because of the things what they are being what they are as far as COVID is concerned and the restrictions. It's freed me up to do a lot more recordings. My focus really on where it's always been. I've always wanted to record my own original music. I mean, to be entirely honest, when I'm doing a lot of these events, I'm doing other people's music. So it really it's given me a great opportunity. At first it's kind of like, oh man, life is going to change, and what's that going to look like? But it's about lemons into lemonade, right?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
So to answer your question, it's actually been uh, a good, a welcomed change. I know there's a lot going on, so it's not not all good, but it's been a welcome change for sure.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah. What is the process you've been using to produce your tracks? Like, how have you? Do you write all the music yourself, or do you have other people you work with?
Well, yeah. So I mean, I guess like any creation, everything starts with an idea, right? So I mean, I have tons of, I don't know if I would call them songs, but more of like outlines, or some might even consider it poetry that I just store up in my phone. So I'm always just writing down ideas, song ideas, that sort of thing. And then when I have something that I really want to flesh out and turn into a piece of music, that's when and I have a great producer that I work with. I also I play keys, I play guitar, and so but my producer is really good with the studio aspect of things, and he's an amazing musician himself. So we just we hook up, and then we get together, and I start sort of helping him understand my ideas. Sometimes I'll use reference tracks, even if it's like other existing songs that may sort of just help get us on the same page,
Mm-hmm.
and just for inspiration also. And then from there, we just get down to it and we start creating tracks. So we play and come up with something that at the end of the day that I love, but I want for us both to love it.
Mm-hmm.
He's really become quite the godsend for me as far as my music journey is concerned when it comes to creating my music. So then when we have a good instrumental, so that's really all we do in the first stage of things, then I sit with it and I take it with me everywhere, and I just kind of put it on a loop in the earphones, whether I'm this or that. I really find that it's great to listen in the gym. It's a great time to come up with some ideas. It kind of becomes like a subconscious listening, and then I will start. I have an interesting process. A lot of song music makers that I know think that my process is a bit unique, but it's mine. So what I do is I take the instrumental and I just start coming up with melodies. So I do melodies first, and it's really whatever I hear, the different melodies that jump out at me. I just go with those, and then I record those on my own. So it's really just like an instrumental with oohs, ahs. It's very much like just scatting, like some jazz on some jazz stuff, And then when I have a good melody that I like, from verses to choruses to bridge and all of that, I go back and then I go back to my original like poetry, as I put it earlier, and then I find something. Usually by that point I would have already known which piece I want to, work with, but I sort of plug it in. Because when I'm writing this poetry, it's not in particularly in a song format. So I'll take it and then I plug it into this melody that I've created, and so it's like a three, maybe more, but I mean, largely speaking, it's like a 3-part process. And as far as that goes, and then I'll bounce that off, and then when I come up with something that works, once I've gotten a song format, still staying true to the message that I want to convey, I bounce that off my producer, just to have like an extra set of ears,
Right.
then we'll maybe tweak some ideas, and then when we have something that we love, we go in, we recorded it, and like I said, he's really great at that. He's sort of like a genius when it comes to that. So and then he'll mix. I have it mastered, and then we usually good to go from there. But it's a process. It's nothing that, I mean, I've heard of some people making songs in like overnight. Doesn't quite happen that way with me. It tends to be a fairly lengthy process, several weeks for sure.
Huh. And who are some of your influences?
I have influences going. See, I grew up, like I said, singing in church, and my parents, with my parents, I've been a huge lover of the Motown era, the
Mm-hmm.
soul singers. I mean, if it's interesting because my sound and the music that I'm creating is a little bit, I'd say, uncharacteristic. I mean, if you were to ask me to sing something for you, I probably would sing something that's a little bit more soulful and maybe ballady, But just because those are kind of my roots, I'd have to say. So to answer your question, I mean, I find myself feeling cliche saying this because so many artists say this, but Donny Hathaway was just one of the most amazing vocalists, I think, of all time. And I have to say, I found him at such, you probably know it, you know him, he sang This Christmas. It's a really popular, you hear it every, hang all the mistletoe, I'm gonna get to know you better. So it's a popular Christmas song, and I had always, as a child, listened to, I think, female. I was inspired by female vocalists. I guess maybe my voice was probably at that place where it worked a little bit better. And I was about 14, and I'd never heard that song, that Christmas song. And I was in the car with my brother, and I heard this voice, and I was like, "Who is that?" Like, it's just silky and smooth and just so beautiful. And that's when I fell in love with Donny Hathaway. And so he was, like, I'd say, my vocal mentor, like,
Mm-hmm.
for a large portion of, like, and he came at the perfect time because I was 14, my voice was starting to change. And it was this man with this amazing voice that just, I loved. But I mean, but beyond that, I mean, I have some, I mean, Whitney Houston was amazing. Her ability to construct a song was just masterful, just the way she'd start with, you almost question, can this woman really sing, and then by the time she gets to like the climax of the song, it's like, whoa, so as far as structure of a song, she lent herself, her musicality, wonderfully to that. Gospel singers, I mean, Daryl Coley, Lucretia Campbell, I mean, I can go on, so many. I think that
Right.
that's really what makes artists, individual and their best, when it's several influences that make up who they are, as opposed to sounding like someone in particular.
Yeah.
Have you ever found yourself like writing or singing a song, or coming up with a song, and you realize, oh, this is actually influenced by somebody else, or you're putting two and two together afterwards. Has that ever happened to you?
That does happen, you know, and I'd say more so. I'm not going to say so much in the writing process, because at the end of the day, when I'm writing, it's really coming entirely from me. So, you know, and my experiences. But however, I will say that there are times where it's just like, wow, this is very like reminiscent of so and so, you know, and it may very well be an artist that I appreciate or even don't necessarily, you know, love or admire in that way, but it can be sort of put you in the mindset of a certain artists or, you know, certain musicians for sure.
Hmm. You seem like you really have like a firm grasp on your process. Like you really like you were just like breaking it down, and like that was it was really cool to hear. Do you ever when you get stuck with something, if you ever get stuck on like an idea or a lyric or a melody or whatever it is,
Sure.
do you push through that, or do you often just kind of like let time have its way with it and figure it out later?
That's a great question. I love that question. And it's interesting because I'm going to say I'm stuck currently at the moment working on a song, and and I'm letting it get the best of me, and I shouldn't.
Uh-huh.
But you know, so to answer your question, yeah, yes, that I do get stuck, and typically, I'd say historically, I would stop and give and be patient with myself and say, you know what, let me give this, let it run its course, whether it's writer's block or whatever you want to call it, you know, a speed bump in the process, and let myself come back to it. But you know, sometimes life happens, and then we procrastinate, and that's not generally the best way of doing most things. I mean,
Right.
it's tricky when you're an artist and a creative, right? Because you know, it's not like really any other, you know, sort of type A process
Mm-hmm.
or profession. So, you know, yeah, in this case, I would say that I would typically give myself some space and some time. However, I recently read somewhere, I was reading about like songwriting or just the writing process in general, and it said that, and it really spoke to me. It said that writer's block doesn't exist, you know, and it's really just an excuse, because at the end of the day, even if you're just going to throw out some word vomit, as they call it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you throw all these words up in the air and maybe make sense of it later, but just get it out, get something out. So when I find myself like in these situations where I'm stuck, so to speak, and I can remind myself of that, you know, little bit of wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
it usually tends to help me, and if nothing else, it keeps me writing. So for sure. So to answer your question, it's a bit of both.
Yeah,
Mm.
totally.
Reminds me of this album, Unicorn Vomit, that we interviewed the ISM maybe 4 or 5 months ago. But one of my favorite albums, and that's a really great episode. It's a good album if you ever are feeling stuck. You just listen to it and you can feel like the flow of just the words spouting out.
Totally. Unicorn font. That's cool.
Yeah, Unicorn Vomit. I wanted to know how you found your producer and how do you decide on who to collaborate with or who to work with.
Sure, sure. You know, it's funny because, like any relationship or successful relationship, I should say, it really comes down to chemistry. You know, and you can't create it. It's something you can't create. You know, and this particular producer that I'm working with, I fell in love with him. He is, I'm gonna say, nothing short of a genius. And I met him while, as we mentioned before, I am an actor as well. So I was working on a pilot for a show, and it was a very interesting show. It was about performers and groups, bands, like set based back like in the '80s, like you know, in the Lower East Side, and their rise to stardom. And so I was cast as one of the band members for like the cool band, you know. And there was another young lady in my band who was super talented, and you know, she had a lot of her music, you know, out already, and she was really kind of living the dream of an independent artist. and it was time for us to record our music. So we decided to write music for our characters in the show. It was like they gave us music, and we were just kind of like, what if we did our own stuff, you know? So she was like, you know what? Yeah, sure. I have this great producer. You know, he's amazing. So, you know, production covered all costs, and then we just got in there and started working with this guy, and I fell in love with him. Like we started, you know, it turned out I wrote a decent portion of the songs, and our chemistry was just, you know, unmatched. It was great, and I was like, dude, like I'm definitely gonna be working with you again, you know. And
sorry, what was it about the
sure.
chemistry that you that tipped you off?
Well, you know what? There's something to be said when someone can get in your head. You know what I mean? When someone can understand, you know, I mean, you can articulate as best you can a certain idea or a thought or a sound or a vibe. But when someone can, you know, with few words or no words at all, say, okay, I got you. I understand. You know, that's what it is. That's that magic element, you know. And he does that.
Was there a moment you remember, like the first moment with that? Can you remember the specific thing it was about?
You know, I think there was a time when, well, first off, you know, he is not afraid to challenge me. So, you know, which is really good because, like, technically, like, I'm the one in charge, right? Like, you know, I'm coming to you. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know, he can tell me, like, this is garbage, right? You know, or like, this needs work, or, so I think there was some of that went on during that process. But also, he inspired me to, because this, particularly on that project, and with my other jobs, you know, doing these covers, you know, all the time for these for events, I had to learn to rap doing that, and it was something I never saw myself doing, but inevitably ended up being forced into and becoming fairly good at it, you know. So but then it was one of those things, it's like, you know, it's like back burner, like, okay, I do that for when I'm in this lane, but, you know, for my stuff, no. But he sort of inspired me to give it a try for the music that I was doing, and I'm like, wow, you know, this actually works, and it makes me just that much more versatile. So yeah, I would say that was the point, for sure.
Hmm. Have you always found that music has music always been something really collaborative for you?
You know, you know, as a musician, it's certainly, it has to be, you know, and it's great. It's a great experience for me because I've always been like the loner type. My character, my personality is very sort of like one man show, not the first to ask for help, you know, but it's humbling in that sense. I mean, it's freeing, and it's powerful, but at the same time humbling because you have no choice, right? I mean, sure, I mean, I can be a one man band, I can sing and I can play my guitar or whatever, but if you want to do more with that, if I mean, like performing, you know, for gigs, I'm up there with like a 10-piece, you know, band, and even there, that's when that chemistry, like, as I mentioned earlier, comes into play. And yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, you have to depend on other people. It's got to be a collaboration,
Right.
and it's got to be a harmonious collaboration, because I think that the music tells the story, though the product tells the story of the journey.
Hmm. Speaking of collaboration, you and your producer just released 3 new tracks
Yeah.
pretty recently,
Hmm.
and to me, they evoke a lot of disco and techno and this rich history of dance music.
Sure.
Is that can you talk about the dialogue between the music that you're making and those, like the history of dance music, and also maybe give us a little insight on whose idea that was and how that came about?
Sure, sure. And you know, like I may have mentioned this earlier, but it's interesting, I think, for me, because most people who know me and sort of know my history with music, you know, I've been called a balladeer, you know, and I'm that guy who will sing or play you a slow tune, something that's going to hit you in the heart, you know. Uh, Again, soul music sort of influences growing up. But I got into a stage in my life, probably somewhere in my teens, where I just, probably when I started like going out and, you know, enjoying nightlife, but something happened to me when I experienced like dance music in an environment that sort of, you know, allows for that. And, you know, I just, that feeling of, you know, I guess, because I guess people's guards are down. Maybe people are a little tipsy, you know, people just, and even if not, people are just having a great time. And there's just like like it's like a spirit that just comes over the whole atmosphere, you know. And I wanted to be that for people. That was when I made the decision that that is what I wanted to do, you know. So and then to your other question about, you know, the dialogue between the two, it's interesting because like when you look at music today, or when I look at music today, I feel like there's been a bit of a departure from the, or let me say popular mainstream music, I should be more specific, and say that there's been a bit of departure from some of the musicality that we may have seen, you know, in the beginning of all of all of it, of that sort of style. I mean, granted, we all love to dance, right? I mean, we've been dancing to a good beat as far back as, you know, man can remember or have documented. But as far as our recent history, American history, that dance music, what it was yesterday, if you will, I feel like a lot of the musicality and has gotten lost, or maybe has waned a bit. And so personally, I've always kind of felt a certain way about that, especially since I've developed, you know, realized that I have this passion for popular dance music. It's like, you know, how do I fit into this? Because I mean, you know, I'm a singer. I'm a trained singer. You know, I have a musical theater background, and it's like, you know, I play instruments. It's like, where do I fit into this sort of popular mainstream idea of music? And you just do it. You just make it happen. So I wanted to be that one where like I could still give you this dance song, but then turn it into a ballad and then sing it to you acoustically, you know? So I guess where my dialogue between my current music or music today versus music before is I still want to bring that traditional aspect of musicianship and quality, if you will, because nowadays it's really a lot of it's production quality, and you know, no shade or disrespect to anyone else and their process and their way of making music, because if people love it, then it's sure there's something to it, right? But personally, I do have a connection with those old sounds, those old vocals, you know, and you can find a way to make it work.
Do you think that has something to do with like how popular a like minimalist beat has become? Like I feel like dance music from yesteryear was a lot more maximalist. Like you had everything going on, beat constant, you know, constant beat happening. Maybe, you know, like a rise and fall of the beat. But now pop music really seems to like have taken a monotonous path. I don't know if you find that.
Sure. You know, I mean, I feel a kind of couple of ways about that, about your statement. To be honest, I think that at the same time, while yes, it's been minimal, it's a bit minimalist in the sense that it is usually like a synthesizer, right? And it's just basic. I don't want to say basic, that's probably not a good word, but it's very straightforward, if you will. And there's not much to it in the sense that you're not dealing with a whole lot of like actual instruments, sure.
Okay, I see.
But what I come to find is that personally, from my own experience, and of course music is subjective, but I personally feel like music these days is a little bit more of a distraction from the vocal, if you will. You know, it's really, I find that nowadays popular music is more about the instrumental, because so often it's like, if we have pop singers who, if you really listen, like we don't know what they're saying. And if you even did give it, you know, a listen to, you know, the lyrics written out, it's like, what? Like, this is that song that I'm listening to that everyone loves, you know? Like, you know, I find that the lyrical content in particular is sort of very like set to the side. It's not prioritized at all.
Oh,
And also the vocals, like the artist's vocal performance is, I find, nowadays secondary. So maybe back in the day there was a lot, but I think it's maybe because there actually was a lot. You had the drummer, you had the
right.
keyboardist, you had the guitarist and the bass player, and there was, but then you also had like a singer who could do that without all of that, you know.
Mm. Well, you have songs like WAP. We can't really ignore that in terms of dance music, and you have this entire. It's almost like a lore around the song, so it becomes more than just a song. You have a video, and you have
It's a movement. It's a movement
it's a
for sure.
movement. It's a
Yeah.
statement. It's like a
Yeah,
political statement, and
sure.
that brings us to image, which you as an actor, I think you have a lot to teach us. How much of music do you feel is image? And maybe there's different levels of it. We're talking about different genres or different types of music. Maybe there's different levels, but how much of like just general music do you see of as image?
That's an interesting question, because it's like, do you mean for me personally, or just in
No,
general? It's just
I mean in
because
general. I mean, how much of what we listen to? I'm so interested in this question because I'm interested in like I don't know if you know Kenny G,
of course,
saxophone player. Yeah,
of
like
course.
I wasn't that familiar with Kenny G in terms of like how he actually plays. I know Kenny G. He's like a meme unto himself, right?
Oh my gosh.
And I have saxophone player friends, and some of them are just like, no, Kenny G is like bad. You can't argue that. That is like a statement
Like
that
bad as in not good, or
yeah,
bad as in great?
bad. Well, good question. Yeah, that even has to be defined. But like just bad. Like you can't like this is a constant in the universe. Kenny G is bad, and I'm like, well, no, like a lot of people love Kenny G. He's
Is
a
it
very
is it an
popular.
image thing that they don't
Yeah,
like?
yeah. Is it an image thing? How much of that is an image thing? How much of that is a musical thing? Because I don't think he's a bad saxophone player.
I don't think so at all. And I mean, but then at the same time, it's like, I'm not a saxophone player, right? So, the intricate parts of the skill may be lost on me.
Uh
And
huh.
I think that happens a lot too with mainstream popular music singers, and that audience, because it's like, I think a lot of the listeners might not know a really good singer, if they encountered one, versus someone who's getting by well enough to make a good record.
Mhm.
Um, but as far as image goes, and just to go back to the Kenny G thing, I don't. I have to argue that he's not. I never considered him to be like image driven. He was just like a chill guy who was just like with the curly hair, wore a suit and played the sax. Like, it was like, it was cool in its own right. I mean, maybe some people saw him as a sex symbol. I don't know, but you know, to me, he was just a regular guy playing the sax amazingly. So, uh, but to answer your question, as far as current popular music, I would say that, and I'm sorry to say that, yes, it is definitely more about image these days than it is about musicality and talent. But I'm gonna also throw this in there. I think there's a bit of a trifecta there, because, and there's image, there's the musicality as a performer and as an artist, and then there is marketing.
Mhm.
And I mean, and not particularly in that order, and I couldn't give you a percentage because I really couldn't say, but I think that those three, it takes all three of those things to really get and marketing, I would say, is a little bit higher on that list than potentially the other two, because I think a lot of these people and a lot of artists are just being themselves.
Mhm.
Like, if you like what you're seeing, that's fine, but they have a team of people behind them, driving them like a product and doing it well. They have great minds. And I think that what happens, to be entirely honest, to a lot of really talented artists that we never get to hear them because that aspect in the trifecta is maybe lacking or missing. Because I mean, let's face it, as performers, as artists, you know, we're creatives. We're probably type B. You know, we're free spirits. We create. We're about our music. I mean, if we're truly musicians, right? And probably 9 times out of 10, we don't have degrees in marketing, and you know, are not particularly business minded. I can't speak for everyone. I'm sure that's you know, certainly not the case for everyone. But for the most part, we're of a different breed. And that's why, you know, going back to what you said about collaboration, I think it is important to sort of find a way to establish a team around you. And I say that a team or a person involved in marketing is like so crucial to that, to that collaboration, to that team. It's very important. And I think that's why we don't hear of a lot of the super talented and amazing musicians that are actually there. It's like, you know, we encounter people and it's like, how are you not like famous, or like have more people not heard of you? And I think that really is what it is. If we're just about our music, and you know, sometimes we end up falling by the wayside and not being heard.
Right. I always feel like when I say I like a pop artist, like if I am in conversation and I say I like a certain artist, I always sort of, and they're like, I don't know, and the rebuttal is something like, they're not even good singers, or like their song sucks. It's like, that's part of it. Like that's part of why I like them. That's part of why pop is pop. It's like, I also like the way that she looks and the way that she dances, and her Instagram is cool. It's like, there's so much more to the pop artist than.
You're right. And I would say that personally, I have a lot more to learn as far as that goes, you know, because I've always, the man that I am, I've always just been true to me. And I think I would have, I'd say, a little bit more of a challenging time with someone saying, okay, you have to wear this, you have to say that this way, or, you know, because at the end of the day, you know, I did get into it. I am doing this because of my love of music. Right. But then at the same time, it's like, I want the world to hear my music, you know, sure. So, you know, how much do you give, and, you know, before you've, you know, given too much?
I think it's really telling, like what you said about Kenny G, like he's just being himself, and all these artists are being themselves. They just have a really good team of marketing people who are like, well, we can make Kenny G into a sex symbol. Look at that hair. Like, look at that saxophone. It's just, listen to it. Like,
the hair is pretty great. The hair is great.
Yeah, you can't argue with that. I mean, you can say, okay, maybe he's no Charlie Parker, but the hair. I get in trouble here with all my saxophone friends. But that's really interesting that you have just a team of people marketing somebody who is being themselves. So maybe we're looking at them and saying, oh, they're selling out, but no, really somebody is just selling who they actually are.
That is exactly how I feel, you know, and I think at the end of the day, I mean, it's sad to say, but, you know, people as a whole, you know, can be very much like sheep, right? I mean, if like one person comes to you and says, oh, check out this thing, it's absolutely amazing, you'd be like, okay, maybe it's not your thing. But if you have 1,000 people coming to you saying that same thing is amazing, it's so good, like you have to try it, you're going to say, okay, you know, let me give it a shot. And then how often do we hear that song that when we first heard it, it's like, I could take it or leave it. But then you hear it everywhere. And then it's like, next thing you know, it's on your Spotify playlist, and that's the only thing you want to listen to. So yeah, it's like subliminal, you know, messaging, and it's a power of suggestion that really is shaping what it is that we like.
So how do we, as musicians, balance this thing of making the best music we can, making the truest music we can, and then marketing ourselves?
That's a great question. And I think personally, I'd like to say that I'm on the road to doing that. And I say that only because, look, I mean, like I said, my roots are church, soul music, you know, musical theater, all of that, you know. And don't get me wrong, I love pop. Like I said, I told you the story of how I realized I need to be doing this. But at the same time, it's like, I think maybe there's a degree of a balance of, okay, this is what I have, and this is what people want to hear. And there's got to be some way of marrying the two,
Yeah.
you know, because at the end of the day, I don't know if you had the opportunity to listen to my tracks, but, you know, I'm using my voice. Like, you know, my singer friends, I don't think could say that I'm selling out, because I'm actually, you know, I'm staying true to that side of me.
Right.
You know what I mean? I give you the big notes. I give you the runs, as they call them, and the riffs and all that stuff. And, you know, so there is a way. There's always a way. And if it's never been done before, all the better for you, because now you've created something that we haven't seen.
Absolutely. Can you talk about your tracks as sort of like post-COVID songs?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So it's funny you'd say that, because my most recent song, "Dance to the End," who I did with a super incredibly talented singer herself. Her name's Petra. She's on that with me. I asked her to be on that, and it's because she's amazing. She's actually the one who introduced me to the producer. I just love her and I love working with her.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I had an idea of a post-COVID song. And I said, you know what, like, if there's anything anyone could relate to, it's being locked up in our home, you know, sick and tired of not I mean, of course, things have changed, and people these days are doing their own thing. But the opening lyrics of the song are, I say to her, it's been a minute since we've really had a conversation face to face, you know, I think I'm missing you. And then it really tells the story of these two people who are in separate places, you know, missing each other, and finally, like, I get to see you, and they end up meeting in a dance club. That's when they see each other. And that moment of just being able to actually be in each other's space and be physical and be close and to just dance. And like, and I think on a level that also sums up, you know, my sort of coming of age story regarding popular music. You know, it's like that feeling of just, wow, when that beat drops and you're in that element, it's unmatched.
Right. And this is Dance to the End.
Dance to the End. Right.
I think something that I'll never forget about quarantine was how much more powerful stories became for me.
Sure.
And, like, you know, I think everyone was binge watching whatever, and you know, watching movie after movie after Netflix.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Get some stock in Netflix. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Missed that train, but
right.
You have to have money to buy stock. That was my point.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. Zoom is really where it was at, if we'd known.
So I think it's powerful to hear that song has like such a narrative to it.
Yeah.
Do you mostly write songs with the narrative in mind, or does the narrative happen first and then, you know, you attach words to it, or do you build the narrative from? Yeah.
You know, like I said, I have my own interesting way of doing it, and most singer-songwriters think me strange in my process, but yes, I do it entirely separately, because, and I think it's just the way that my brain works. It's like a left brain, right brain thing, right? So it's like on one side of my brain, it's like I'm being entirely creative and artistic, and then the other side of my brain, it's like I can be analytical and think, you know, and write and tell an in-depth story, right? And you know, if both of those sides of your brain can work together, then power to you, you know. But I like to shut one off at any given one at a time, and focus entirely on one or the two or the other. And so for me, like I said, I have in my phone all these these poems, essentially. I mean, I know that they're going to be songs, so I sort of bullet point them, you know, at what I'm trying to say, and sort of how I would do it structurally. But I mean, forget rhyme schemes, forget, you know, all that sort of thing. And I like to have multiple meanings in my songs. I like to layer meanings and have like hidden meanings, maybe for this type of audience, for that type of audience. So I flesh all of that out there, but then it comes to a point, like I said, when in the creation process, after having instrumental and I have this weird sounding, I mean, if you could hear the stuff on my computer, it's just like, you know, the instrumental to my songs with me literally just like scatting over it with just no words, you know, and then I take that when I find something that I love and then I plug in, like it really comes down to, it's done syllabically, like it's syllable by syllable really, and it's just plugged in, you know, I marry the meaning of what I'm in the heart of what I'm trying to say with you know, with the instrumental and the vocal that I have.
Have you ever considered releasing just the oohs and ahs? No lyrics.
Never. Sometimes I have a hard time listening to it. It's just like
Maybe,
I mean, there's
maybe
a
one
thought.
day some super fans will be like, yeah, we found the originals.
Yeah, you'd have to like raid my computer for that, but yeah, it's I suppose it's possible.
Yeah.
God no.
I want to go back to marketing because I still like. How do you market yourself? Like, what are some steps that you take to make sure that people are listening to your music, that people know about your music?
Well, you know, I kind of before, I'm going to say very recently, fell into that category that I mentioned earlier of being like, you know, this sort of lovesick with music musician or artist who was entirely immersed in the creative process of things and didn't, I mean, you know, everything, hopefully every day is a learning experience and a journey, you know. So it wasn't until, I'm going to say honestly very recently, that I found someone who's very talented and brilliant, who's handling all my marketing. Because it, you know, it like you know, like you said about collaborations, it really is just another form of a collaboration, and it's strengths and weaknesses, to be honest. So, you know, it's about accepting what it is that I can't do and saying, oh, you can. So, you know, I'm going to give that to you. And I'm beginning to see a difference. So it's even, like I said, in the starting phases, but yeah, it's certainly not my area of expertise. So yeah, that's it. Marketing is so important.
I think that's something that I think this is something that's going to be very interesting to our listeners because it's something that every musician has thought about and has weighed. I mean, I have for sure. Like, do I find somebody to just take care of my marketing? It sounds like the dream, but then there's this kind of fear of like, what happens if it goes wrong? I'm going to waste a lot of money. I'm going to waste a lot of effort looking for this person, whatever. Can you tell us about the specifics of how that's worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's the nature of life, right? I mean, what if your song sucks? You know, what if no one listens? So, I mean, at the end of the day, we have to take chances every day. And also I think you have to ask yourself, what am I in this for? You know, what do I want? But I think I'm gonna venture to say that anyone who's creating music wants their music to be heard, right? I mean, you can go to that person just like, no, I just want to, you know, sit and just, you know, in the park and just play to the, you know, but it's like, sure, and I'm sure you love that, but at the end of the day, it's, you know, more rewarding when you're being heard. We make music to be listened to, and if that truly matters, there's only one way to do that. There's 7+ billion of us here, and there are a lot of musicians, you know. So if you want to get your stuff on the other side of the world, you need someone who knows how to do that.
Is there anything you would warn against for people who are going into like finding a marketing person? Anything you learned, like any tips you have?
I would say don't go with the first person, and get some ideas. I mean, because at the end of the day, look, in the starting stages and even moving forward, you're gonna have to pay people, like, you know, and that's also something you have to consider. I mean, unless you're really, really fortunate and have, and I find this to be more the case when you are working with someone on the artistic side, that you'll find someone who's just that interested and that invested and believes in you enough to do it pro bono.
Right.
But on the sort of professional and business side of it, it's not likely. And so yeah, you know, if you value your finances, you'll weigh your options, you'll see what they can do for you, and get and have a pre-planned sort of strategy, know how they're gonna work. And the interesting thing about 2000 and plus after, is that we have social media, and nowadays, like, that is everything. Like, I mean, I do I act as well, like I told you, I do these commercials, and sometimes people are like, oh, is it going to be on TV or is it going to be in internet? And I'm like, the internet nowadays is bigger than the TV. We don't watch cable, but we watch YouTube, and that's where all of we get this annoying ads that we're waiting to skip. So times have changed, and even if your marketing is just based, social media based, there's ways of working with that, algorithms and all this stuff that makes my head hurt.
I guess I haven't mentioned this on the show before, but I did work for almost 3 years as a quote manager, which I really was just like a hired marketing person. I spent most of the time sending out emails for a musician who was pretty old and pretty renowned in the industry in his own way. Not like famous or anything, but in certain circles, sure. And it was really hard. And I can't believe how slow it went, because I've always thought, if I could just have somebody to sit and send all these emails, things will just start piling in. And no, it's like you have somebody doing 20, 30 hours a week for you, and it's still just kind of trickling. You have to get something rolling. Also, I would add, listen to your marketing people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Because there's one point where the music ends and the business begins, and it's important to stay in your lane. It's important to know where strengths and weaknesses, like I said. But that's great. I mean, so you understand what it goes into it, what it takes to do all of that.
A little bit. It was a weird arrangement for me. I'll leave it at that. It wasn't exactly marketing. It wasn't exactly management. It was a lot of just like desk work, and I don't really know that either of us knew what the other was getting into with it.
Yeah.
We both learned a lot, and I definitely learned a lot about how to manage myself, even though it's hard to find the time to do that.
Right.
I guess the advice that I would get out of it is like, take 10 hours a week, carve it out, and just like sit and even just think, have like a meeting with yourself about where am I going and what direction and what is the priority. Maybe we do a whole show on that sometime.
I think that's great advice. I think that's phenomenal advice, for sure. Because I'm not that guy. I mean, I've done it. I've done the 9 to 5. And I'm just not made for it, and even at this stage in the game, I'm starting to put together this marketing team. But I mean, I still have to send out the emails, like I'm doing that stuff, and reaching out to people, and being blessed to be on like your show, and but that takes time and making stuff happen. So I really I get it, and I appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, well, Ryan Love, we really appreciate you being on the show. I hope to dance in person to your music one day.
Me too.
But, don't we all?
We'll just be in our living rooms.
You can do it now. I promise.
That's true.
Yeah. Maybe make you forget a little bit.
One more question. Jack, would you like to do the honors?
Yeah, for sure. Who are some people that you would like to hear interviewed by us?
For one, I would say this amazingly talented girl, Petra, who I have, who I'm doing this most recent song with, a duet, Dance at the End. She's super talented, and she has her own music, that she's been releasing for years now, and she's I'm gonna say an accomplished pianist. She's remarkable. She'd be great. Also, my producer's another great one. His name is Malcolm. He's he's also based in Brooklyn. For sure.
Just Malcolm?
Malcolm Fong. Malcolm Fong.
F-O-N...
G.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has
Thank
been
you,
a pleasure.
Jack, Simon. Really, it's the pleasure's been mine. I appreciate it very much.
Of
And
course.
here, play my song when you can. I want you guys. I want everyone to hear it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we'll find a spot. Maybe right now. So maybe now we'll play Ryan's track, and then we'll play who did I say? Emily's. Oh my God.
God bless your heart. You'll be ready to dance. I hope you have your dancing shoes, folks.
Oh
I
yes.
hope you're ready to dance.
I have my dancing slippers on.
Perfect. Even better. Back support, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. All right, Ryan. Take care.
All right, gentlemen. Thanks again. It really was a pleasure.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.